Greetings and welcome to the Global Supply Chain Management Media Presentation. We are pleased you have selected our program to make you acquainted with working with a global supply chain. The global marketplace has become so popular because it has allowed businesses to compete internationally instead of locally. As a supply chain professional, understanding how to do business within the global marketplace is critical to your success. Understanding the costs and logistics as well as the cultural differences is very important to being successful in the global marketplace. Therefore, the supply chain management specialist has to be aware of the culture of the country the supplier resides in and the importance of knowing how the culture affects the way business should be conducted with the supplier. Anytime a supply chain professional is looking to select new suppliers, certain factors must be considered. Factors such as things that will help your organization better perform for your customers. New suppliers, whether domestic or global, must be able to meet your demands. They should be financially stable and have the capacity to increase production if your demand increases. It is sometimes difficult to find a supplier that is a perfect fit for your needs, but they should be able to adequately support you in the immediate need with the ability to grow to what your organization ultimately needs from a supplier. These things hold true for an international supplier, but there are many other factors that have to be considered to build a successful customer-supplier relationship. When doing business globally, it is important to understand the proper protocol of doing business in a country different from our own. In order to have an effective relationship with these suppliers and to build a successful global supply chain, the various cultures involved must be understood and the relationship must grow in the context of the cultures. This relationship must be orchestrated by the supply chain professional within the organization. The first area that we will discuss is language. In order to build a successful relationship with global suppliers, a relationship must be built in their language. If you have the ability to communicate with the supplier, it is much easier to conduct business. It would be a misconception to think that every supplier speaks English. Making an effort to ensure you can communicate with the supplier in their language shows a level of respect and care about who they are. By no means does this indicate the requirement to learn various foreign languages, although it is very impressive to be able to communicate with the supplier in their native tongue. A translator can accompany you in your meetings. An attempt should be made, however, to at least greet others in their own language. There will be occasions when the supplier can speak English very well, but remember, they have learned the proper way to speak the language and may slang words that are used and can be misinterpreted by the supplier. Therefore, caution must be taken to make sure the idea is being communicated properly. Family values and differences are another area that is very important to understand, although it does not directly affect production. Family, in many cultures, extends far beyond the immediate father, mother, children, etc. In some cultures, immediate family extends to the first and second cousins. Therefore, there is a responsibility to care for and consider the well-being of the extended family. In some customs, one individual can own a company and hire family members as the workers. In this culture, if the company fails to perform to the expectation of the customer, it is a reflection on the failure of the entire family. If, as a supply chain manager, the decision is made to do business with an organization that is family-owned and operated, it is important to understand what that means within the culture this organization exists in. Another aspect to consider in this situation is if there is a family problem or tragedy, does the entire organization close? Another difference in culture involves interpersonal relationships. This is prevalent in the Asian culture. It is important to have smooth interpersonal relationships with your suppliers. This means there is a non-confrontational attitude and the desire is not to give or receive a negative response. There are three primary characteristics of smooth interpersonal relationships. The first is stating an unpleasant truth or opinion in a matter that is calculated to please. In the Asian culture, rebuke is handled with tact and with great concern showing for the person's family, health, and welfare. It is important to explain to the person that is being reprimanded that there will be no change in the way they are treated or accepted as a result of the situation. The second characteristic is the power that peers, groups, or family have in getting things they want. Being accepted in the group is more important than a one-on-one meeting that you may have organized with one person in your supplier's organization. The third characteristic is the use of a mediator to help resolve difficult situations. The mediator will use tact in getting the problem solved without there being any confrontation. These characteristics are somewhat different from the business practices of North Americans. Another area of cultural differences that should be understood when doing business with global suppliers is lunch or dinner meetings when food is served. Especially when the meeting is in a foreign country or if the supplier is hosting the event, never refuse to eat or try something on your plate. This, especially in the Asian culture, is considered very rude and totally unacceptable. Even in European cultures, there are little idiosyncrasies where food is concerned. For example, in Sweden, it is very rude and unprofessional to bring a drink to a meeting in its original container. It should be in a cup or a glass. There are many cultural differences that exist between Asian and American cultures. To take a minute to focus on those differences is important because of the growing popularity of doing business between the two countries. An example of this difference is you, as the supply chain professional, were to send a request for a quote to an Asian supplier. Instead of getting a quote back from them, you may get a note saying, "What do you want to pay?" or "It's up to you." This is a way of them seeing if you really care about them. They have a price in mind but want to see if you're willing to offer a fair price to them and negotiate to their price. If it appears that you are trying to take advantage of them, negotiations will stop and there will be no more contact. The governments in Asian countries operate differently from the American government. In many of the countries, the wealth is controlled by a few families. These families in power can demand changes of anything at any time. There are no voting processes to go through as in with the American government. In many cases, prices are set by the government and not controlled by the market demand. Also, in China, for example, there may be allowable rules for products that can be used that are not allowed in the United States. Things like the level of lead content in products, allowable substances in foods. These are things that a supply chain professional needs to be aware of before conducting business with a foreign supplier. One very big difference in the daily functions of working in Asia versus America is a consideration of time. In Asia, things tend to move slower. There is a feeling that if it does not get done today, there is always tomorrow. This can be a real frustration to Americans who want to get things done quickly. Becoming familiar with other cultures can be a very daunting task. Many times, written documentation about other cultures can be more touristy or only cover governmental type issues. One suggestion is to try to find others that have done business with these cultures and discuss their experiences. Also, a good idea is to speak with missionaries who have spent time in these countries and with other cultures. Missionaries will be able to give you a more vivid picture of the lifestyles and cultural values of particular areas of the country. Thank you once again for your time and attention, and this is businesstraining.com, where you can earn master's level qualifications to make more money.